I never thought my parents, who doted on my genius sister, would ever say I was unnecessary.
One child is enough for us. We don't need you, the underachiever.
Saying so, my parents kicked me out while I was just a kid. The one who reached out to me in my confusion was my uncle.
Sorry I'm not well off, but let's live together.
I took his hand without hesitation. My name is Emily. I'm currently 30 years old, but I have a complex past. It's all about family issues. But first, I want you to hear my story. I was born into a typical family, with a father working as a company employee and a stay-at-home mother. We lived with my paternal grandparents at their home, where my father's unmarried brother, who was my Uncle George, also lived. We started living together when I was 4 years old, and George was 24. Being single and living at the parents' house at around the age of 24 might not be considered unusual. But George had a reason he couldn't leave his parents' house. As a child, I didn't know the details, but it seems George had been frail since he was young. Even as an adult, he was often sick and couldn't hold down a job for long. As a result, he became a part-timer, able to work only a few hours, 2 days a week at most. He certainly couldn't earn enough for living on his own. Maybe he felt ashamed for still depending on his parents at his age because he always looked apologetic.
Really, you're such a burden.
My father often yelled at George, and I frequently witnessed it. Always when the grandparents weren't around. My grandparents loved their healthy son and their frail son equally, without favoritism. The cohabitation started because of my father's financial difficulties, so my father, who was also dependent on his parents, probably wanted to show some restraint in front of them. But when the grandparents weren't there, he always said terrible things to George, looked down on him, and snickered. George, with a sad face, never got angry or talked back. He just stayed silent.
Why don't you get angry?
I once asked him as a child.
It's true that I'm depending on my parents.
He answered with a troubled look. As a child, I thought that made sense, but now that I'm an adult, I think Dad is also depending on them, so he's not in a position to say anything. If I had understood that back then, I would have stood up for George. As a child who didn't understand, even though I felt bad when my father yelled at George, I couldn't say anything. Even though things were tense behind the scenes without my grandparents around, their presence brought peace. In front of my grandparents, George would relax and smile, and my father, regardless of his true feelings, never showed them. My mother was too busy caring for me and my sister Lucy, who was 2 years younger, to pay much attention to the relationship between my father and uncle. As a kid, I thought this routine would last forever. But then, everything changed abruptly. My grandparents died in an accident when I was 6 years old. Their passing left me incredibly sad and lonely. I cried a lot. My sister Lucy and I bawled together. I vividly remember George quietly shedding tears too. But what I remember most, something unforgettable, was my father's laughter. Yes, my father laughed. Despite his own parents' death, he didn't shed a tear, not when we rushed to the hospital, not during the funeral preparations. It wasn't about being stoic. Even as a child, I understood my father wasn't grieving. And then I became certain of it. On the day of the funeral, my father was laughing. He probably thought no one was watching, but I happened to look at him and saw his expression clearly. It wasn't laughter from overwhelming sadness or confusion. I could tell because I'm his daughter. It was a smile of genuine, unbearable joy. My father was happy about my grandparents' death. He probably thought of the various inheritances coming his way. His smile was so grotesque that it scared me, a child, into crying. He must have thought those were tears for my grandparents' passing. George gently patted my head and stroked it. Looking up, I saw his eyes, red from crying but filled with a kind light, looking down at me.
How could Dad and George, real brothers, react so differently to their parents' passing?
It was a moment my unease towards my dad grew. Then, my father's behavior towards George drastically changed. First, my father's attitude towards George became noticeably hostile.
Why should I have to take care of a good-for-nothing like you? Be grateful I let you live here. If you can't pay rent or anything, I'm taking all the inheritance.
At the time, I didn't understand, but it was an utterly unreasonable declaration. Despite having a right to an equal share of the inheritance as brothers, my father claimed it all for himself as the head of the family. George could have stood up for himself or sought legal help, but he did nothing of the sort. Even though he looked sad, he never argued back or claimed his share of the inheritance.
Are you okay, Bailey?
Worried about my increasingly downcast George, I asked.
I'm frail and can hardly work, so it can't be helped.
He said with a weak smile. Day by day, as my father hurled abuse at him, my frail George became thinner and his complexion worsened. Yet, George always smiled at me.
It's okay.
Always. But 3 months after my grandparents passed away, George was ultimately kicked out of the house.
Get out, you good-for-nothing.
He was told, and without any objection or resistance, he left.
George, I don't want you to go.
I was sad about the farewell to my kind George and pulled on his arm, but he gently removed my hand and patted my head.
It's okay, Emily. You're a strong girl. You'll be all right without me.
But you won't be okay, will you?
George, frail and unable to work properly. How was he going to survive on his own?
It's okay.
With tears in his eyes, he looked at me and said that before he left. The separation from George was sad, but there was nothing a child like me could do. Moreover, I soon found myself in a situation where I couldn't afford to worry about someone else. 2 years after my grandparents passed away, I was just a regular 8-year-old attending elementary school. And then, when my sister Lucy turned 6 and was about to start elementary school.
In kindergarten, they said Lucy is really smart.
That's what my mother started to say, and it was the beginning of everything.
She might be a genius like me.
My father was over the moon, and he impulsively decided to have her take an IQ test. And the result was astonishing.
IQ 150. Definitely got my genes.
Turns out, she scored an impressive IQ of 150. I didn't fully grasp it, but I understood my sister must be something special.
Wow, Lucy, that's amazing.
Thanks, Emily.
Not really getting it, I praised her, and she beamed with joy. Those were the good days. Until then, everything was fine. But then it all went downhill.
All right, Let's get her into a good school.
My father declared, ready to act on his spur-of-the-moment decision.
Starting now.
Even my mother was surprised, but was swept up by father's inexplicable confidence.
She's a genius. She'll be fine.
And with that, my mother got on board too. Then, my sister started going to tutoring every day. Since it's my mother who's accompanying my sister, naturally, household chores tend to get neglected. Then my father brought it up.
Hey, since your mom and Lucy are busy, take care of the house yourself.
He said that to me. And that's how laundry and cleaning fell to me. After school, hanging out with friends wasn't an option. I had to head straight home to do chores, or I'd get yelled at by my parents. If I didn't do them right, there were days I'd be skipped for dinner.
We don't have time to take care of a failure like you.
I was told.
Why can't you score perfect marks?
I was yelled at by my father for bringing home a test with a score in the 90s.
Just try to be a little more like your sister Lucy.
My mother said, exasperated. Even if I scored well on tests or came first in the sports day, my parents wouldn't notice or praise me, just ignored me. They'd mechanically tell me to learn from your sister Lucy. And then they started saying things like this.
Well, it's hopeless for you. Lucy is a genius, but you're just incompetent.
Lucy really was a genius, rapidly advancing in her studies with just a short period of tutoring, and passed the entrance exams with ease. As that happened, my parents became even colder towards me. They spent money on Lucy. I wasn't given new clothes and had to struggle wearing the ones that had become too small. Lucy got to eat delicious food. I got leftovers. Lucy was taken on trips. I had to stay home. My parents blatantly doted only on Lucy.
This kid's gonna be a big shot someday. Then our retirement will be smooth sailing.
My father would say, laughing.
A doctor, maybe, or a lawyer, even aiming to be a politician wouldn't be bad.
Having a genius daughter, we're super lucky.
I was invisible in my parents' eyes. My existence, crying in Lucy's shadow, was forgotten. Then, when I was 10, my parents finally said,
We don't need you because the education for Lucy costs a lot.
What?
Confused by what that meant, my father said,
We're saying one child, Lucy, is enough.
You mean, to live on my own? How on earth?
Well, I'll at least give you your uncle's contact. Take some money and figure it out on your own.
And with that, I was really given just a small amount of money and kicked out of the house. Crying and pleading to be let back in, I banged on the front door, but there was no response. The door remained closed. In despair, I headed to the station. Being 10 years old, I had enough knowledge to ride the train. Asking people for directions, somehow I made it to George's apartment. When he answered the bell, he had the same kind face I remembered. He was shocked to see me and let me in, and when I told him what happened, he was furious.
What are they thinking? No kidding.
Even though it wasn't me he was angry at, I felt so sorry and depressed. Wondering if I was just a burden, tears started to well up in my eyes. Then, a hand was gently placed on my drooping head. It was the same large, warm, kind hand I remembered.
It's been tough, huh? It's going to be okay now.
But what should I do now?
I'm still prone to illness, and my income is low, as you can see. I'm poor.
George said with a wry smile in front of me. But he seemed much stronger than when we lived together before. Maybe being away from my father had brought some change in his mindset. Looking straight at me, George smiled and said,
I'm sorry for being poor, but if you don't mind, I'd be happy to become your parent.
Really?
More like a foster dad in this case, I guess. I might not be much, but...
Before he could finish, I threw myself into his big chest. It was similar to my dad's, yet entirely different. George's embrace was incredibly comforting.
It's going to be okay now.
As I cried with relief, George gently stroked my back. It felt like having a real parent who poured love into me. From then on, I was raised by George. Sure, he was poor and still prone to sickness, and life was tough at times. But even in poverty, our home was filled with smiles. I had almost forgotten how to smile when I was with my parents, but living with George, I began to smile a lot. A poor yet happy family. That's what we were. George gave me so much love. Wanting to repay his kindness, I did my best in everything. When I worked hard, George praised me. Even if the outcomes were poor, he praised the effort. That made me even more determined to do my best. The presence of my parents, who never praised me, eventually faded from my memory. Growing up under George's care, 20 years flew by in no time. Now, I am 30 years old. And now, the familiar faces stand in front of me. Mom, Dad.
It's been a while, Emily. Have you been living well?
The one smiling is my father, whom I pushed to the far corners of my memory. He's aged considerably, with hardly any hair left. My gaze towards him is icy. It's only natural, thinking, what do you want now?
Well, let's put the past behind us and get along as a family from now on.
Despite my icy gaze, my father said this without flinching. What? Naturally, this was my response. What? Get along as a family. Don't joke with me.
You really are a failure. Always had a bad mouth. No help for it. I'll start re-educating you from now.
No, thank you. Please leave. I push back my father as he tries to enter the apartment. And then my mother joined in.
Emily, don't be stubborn. Rely on us. Living in such a run-down apartment, you mustn't be leading a decent life.
It's none of your business. Please leave.
Don't be stubborn. Just let us in.
No, leave.
Let us in.
Go away. What's with them? If my memory serves right, they are in their mid-50s. Their strength should be waning, yet they are unexpectedly forceful. No, it makes sense. 2 against 1. I'm obviously going to be overpowered. It reminds me of those days playing foot wrestling as a kid. As I was musing, my father's foot reached the entrance. Heave-ho! I pushed back with all my might, like a foot wrestler.
Whoa.
Oh my gosh.
Caught off guard, both of them fell to the ground. Accordingly, I ended up looking down on them. You're so annoying.
What?
I'm busy. Can't you just go home?
What kind of way is that to speak? What do you think of your parents?
The moment you abandoned me, I never thought of you as my parents.
But we raised you till you were 10.
Till I was 10, huh? The only decent upbringing I had was when my grandparents were still alive.
But you were still able to live, weren't you?
That's no reason for you to act tall, high, and mighty. As my parents stood up, rubbing their backs, they seemed to have shrunk in size. Even though they're just in their 50s, they looked aged beyond, almost like they were in their 70s. You said it yourself, didn't you? One child, Lucy, was enough. With a genius sister like that, there's no need for you to come see me.
That's not the case anymore.
My words twisted my father's face into a bitter grimace. Did something happen to Lucy? Did she become jobless?
She became a lawyer.
Well, that's great. Impressive, really. IQ 150 and all.
And then she disappeared.
Impressive indeed. As the story goes, Lucy smoothly entered law school, took the bar exam after graduate school. She didn't pass on her first try but eventually succeeded. It's a bit beyond me, but she completed her training and officially became a lawyer, or so they say. And yet, she vanished.
She said, "I won't take care of you two," and left.
Well, so you were abandoned. Congratulations.
Not congratulatory at all. That ungrateful girl, repaying our upbringing with betrayal.
Well, there was no love, was there? My parents thought they were doting on my sister, but from her perspective, it probably just felt suffocating. Parents who changed completely based on an IQ number. Parents who placed excessive expectations. Parents who disguised their desires as love, pushing them onto her. No wonder Lucy got fed up.
My company went bankrupt.
Tough economy, huh?
There's hardly any severance pay, and the unemployment benefits are about to run out.
Good for you?
Not good at all. But it's too late to start over at a new company now.
Too hard, huh? I couldn't help but laugh at the lack of enthusiasm.
So, you need to take care of us.
The laughter dies instantly. No, I don't.
What? You're going to abandon your parents.
The only parent I have is George, who has been taking care of me since I was 10.
What?
My father looks bewildered by my words. Coming to this apartment means you knew I was living with George, right? What's there to be surprised about now?
You think of him as your parent.
The George who showered me with love. He's my dad. You two never gave me any love, so you're not my parents. My parents looked at me in astonishment. Despite his frail health, George worked hard. He struggled so I wouldn't have to. I worked really hard to repay that kindness.
So, you're doing some decent work.
Sort of. As I shrugged, my father grabbed my shoulder tightly. Let go.
So, you're angry and you're embarrassed. Oh,
Listen to what I'm saying.
no need to say more. I understand perfectly. You were feeling lonely, huh? And now you're sulking. That's right. Always being not favored because of your sister. No wonder you're sulking. But now that you're with us, you're all happy and bashful. So, you're emotionally closed off.
Don't make things up.
Relax. From now on, we'll be together as a family.
I couldn't make sense of it. Is my father already suffering from dementia? I stared blankly at my parents for a moment, gradually finding their foolish faces amusing.
What are you laughing at? Happy, aren't you?
No way. Just so you know, I haven't thought about you guys once in these past 10 years. Thanks to George, I've been living very fulfilling days. My parents were shocked by my sudden laughter, but I continued. I went to university through a scholarship program.
Oh, you did. Then you must have gotten a good job.
Yes, I got a job at a pretty famous corporation.
Well, ain't that something?
And I got married through some connections.
Oh, then we must greet your husband.
No need.
Yes, we must.
It's impossible. He's abroad right now.
Oh, yeah.
Just so you know, George is also abroad.
George too. Really? What does that mean? I thought given you were living here alone, and given how frail he must have been, he may have passed away by now.
Don't just assume George is dead. My husband got an overseas assignment, heard it was a good place for recuperation, so George went along. He's completely recovered and is happily playing with my children.
Wait, you have our grandchildren.
The rapid influx of information seems to have nearly short-circuited my parents' brains. As they blinked in confusion, I smiled brightly at them. At first, George was hesitant about living together with us, but he eventually agreed. We're all living happily together as a family.
Then, maybe we could go abroad too.
That's fine, but we won't live together or take care of you. Live on your own money.
That's impossible. Are you abandoning your parents?
You were the ones who abandoned me first. I finally snapped at their utterly selfish reasoning. My parents turned pale. I owe nothing to you, who abandoned me, but I owe a great deal to George. I plan to repay his kindness.
Such. At least send us some money.
George never touched the money I sent him, and he lived in this rundown apartment all this time. But he finally agreed to live with me overseas, so I came to finalize things.
What?
To think you'd show up on the very last day I'm leaving this old place. What a coincidence.
Huh? So, you're leaving?
I've finished the paperwork, and I'm just about to return the keys. Then I'm heading back to my home overseas.
What about us? Are you abandoning your parents?
After my mother turned pale and asked, I nodded emphatically. Thank you for abandoning me. Saying so with a smile left them speechless. Really, thank you. Because of that, I'm truly happy now. With that, I walked past them. How does it feel, you who abandoned your daughter, to be abandoned by both your daughters? I asked one last question, but no reply came. I didn't wait for their answer and left, thinking this would be the real farewell with my biological parents. Afterwards, I returned to my home overseas. The effort I put in while living with George paid off. I managed to secure a job at a good company. Then, with an overseas assignment, I met a man and got married. George cried and blessed the marriage. And with the birth of our children and George joining us, I'm now living happily with my husband, my children, and my Uncle George.
And I wish I could find a wonderful man like your husband soon.
My sister Lucy says, laughing beside me as we watch the children play in the garden. Well, now that you're free from our parents' grip, I'm sure you'll find someone.
I need to get used to work first.
Why don't you try for a liar's license here?
I think I'll pass on being a lawyer. I've had enough of following our parents' orders. I want to pursue a career I'm passionate about.
That makes sense. Right after I was abandoned by our parents and left home, Lucy sent a letter to George. It contained complaints about our parents' twisted love and the pressure she was under. She wanted to come live with George too, but his financial situation couldn't support both of us. And most importantly, our parents wouldn't allow it. So, for the time being, we've arranged for her to live at our parents' home where she can get by, and we're making plans for her to move out once she's an adult. It was tough for her, but my sister managed to overcome the trials and gain her freedom. She left home taking advantage of the moment our parents were happy about her becoming a lawyer. Of course, I helped her with that. She secured a job here but is struggling with the language and adapting to new things. But I'm sure she'll be fine. My sister Lucy, she just kept on living under our parents' roof. I tell you, I've never known anyone as patient and hardworking as her. She'll surely adapt here soon. I'm more worried about George. George is going to language school, I mentioned, and Lucy nodded happily.
Sounds good. It's never too late to start something new. He seems to be in much better health now, so we need to make sure he enjoys life from here on out.
Indeed. Our parents, who had taken everything from George, including his inheritance, got carried away with their spending and quickly ran out of money. They desperately tried to invest in their daughters, but now they've hit unemployment. They went ahead and sold the house to make some money, but it turns out they had some kind of renovation loan or something tied to the house, so they were left with very little in hand. Our relatives have apparently been hit up for money, but everyone has coldly turned them away, forcing them into a life of poverty. A relative shared with a wry smile that the constant quarreling between them is unbearable. Looking down on siblings or discriminating against one child over another is just unthinkable.
Indeed.
Lucy nodded to my words. I'll always protect you, Lucy, no matter what.
I've already been protected enough by you. Thank you, Emily.
When I was moved by my sister's grown-up words.
What are you protecting?
A hand was placed on my head. It seemed to have more wrinkles and felt smaller, but as warm as ever, making me squint as I turned around. Thank you.
Huh?
Seeing George standing there with a puzzled look, I smiled and said, Thank you, Dad. I love you.
The kid's mom is infertile and old. The kid must be disabled anyway.
I ran into my ex-husband by chance, 4 years after our divorce. He was walking in front of the station, arm in arm, with a young woman. I never wanted to see him again, but it couldn't be helped. There I was, unable to run away, holding my 3-year-old son's hand.
Is that kid mine? I told you not to have it.
It's none of your business anymore, is it?
Sure. I have no intention of acknowledging him. Just don't bother me.
He's just the worst kind of man. Deep down, I'm so glad I left him. But the woman next to my ex has been acting strange this whole time. Her face is pale, and her lips are trembling. She's frightened. Is that your child? She muttered. Who could have imagined the turmoil my son and I were about to be drawn into? My name is Natalie, a 46-year-old office worker. Now, it's just me and my 3-year-old son Max living together. He was born when I was 43, through a pregnancy at an advanced stage, but he's growing up healthy and strong, which makes me incredibly happy. I often think to myself how glad I am to have had him. When the biological father found out I was pregnant, he told me to get an abortion. Those were truly tough and painful days. I was reminiscing about those hellish days. After graduating from college, I got a job at a company and worked as the CEO's secretary. I hate to toot my own horn, but I was good at being considerate, and the CEO valued me highly. During that time, I met the CEO's son, Ethan. I caught Ethan's eye.
Natalie, it was love at first sight. Please marry me.
Ethan, raised in a privileged environment, had his unreliable moments, but that only tickled my maternal instincts, and I agreed to marry him. Since I was already favored by Ethan's father, the CEO, he quickly approved of our marriage.
Marrying a reliable person like Natalie will surely settle Ethan down. I'm really glad. Natalie, please take care of him.
Thank you. I'm happy to hear you say that. Ethan wanted me to support him at home, so I quit my job and became a full-time homemaker.
I'm the eldest son, so I plan to take over my father's company in the future. Please support me.
Understood. I'll support you with all I've got. My in-laws were very kind, and we had a harmonious relationship, so I started living with them right after getting married. However, my mill was frail and needed care, which was unfortunate. My Phil was very kind to her, always speaking to her gently, and we wanted to be a couple like them. But that dream was not to be. My Phil was a very wealthy man, and we had an elderly live-in helper named Grace. Grace and I took care of my mill and the household chores. Grace was a good person, and we lived together, helping each other out like a real family.
Natalie, thank you always. I only had a son, so having you feels like having a real daughter, and it makes me happy.
Thank you. I lost my parents early, so being treated kindly by you and my in-laws makes me feel grateful to be part of this family. My parents died early in an accident, so I was raised by my grandparents. My grandparents passed away as if they were waiting for me to find a job, so I was truly grateful to have met my in-laws. My married life was smooth sailing, but my husband's business affairs were not going so well. Though my husband intended to take over the company, his father felt Ethan was not up to the task in terms of management. As a result, my Phil was quite strict in his guidance towards Ethan.
My dad never trusts me. He refuses to retire. As long as he's active, I can't become the president.
My husband complained discontentedly. A few years later, ominous clouds began to gather over my marriage. Even after 5 years of marriage, we were unable to have children. Ethan blamed me.
Why can't you have kids? All my friends had kids right after getting married. It's embarrassing that I'm the only one without kids.
That's not fair. It's wrong to just decide it's my fault.
There's no way the problem is with me. It has to be your fault.
The conversation was futile. He baselessly decided that the infertility was my fault. While my husband was like this, my in-laws never pressured us about having children. I could tell they were considerate of me. They must have wanted to see their grandchildren too. Linda, I'm sorry we haven't been able to give you a grandchild yet.
What are you talking about? It's not your fault, Natalie.
That's right. Children are a blessing, and it's okay if we don't have them.
We're just happy to have you with us, Natalie.
My in-law said this, but I wanted children too, and I wanted to give them grandchildren, so I started considering infertility treatment. However, my husband was not very enthusiastic about it, but I insisted, and he accompanied me to the hospital for an examination. The results showed that I had a condition that made my fallopian tubes prone to blockage, making it difficult for me to conceive.
See? I knew the problem was with you. I regret marrying you. It's like I drew the short straw. This is so frustrating.
My husband blamed me as if he had been proven right, but it was also found that he had a condition that made it difficult to conceive. His sperm count was low, and their motility was poor.
What? No way.
However, the doctor said it wasn't entirely impossible, so we were advised to continue treatment. I wanted to continue the treatment, but my husband was against it.
I don't want to undergo such treatment. It's not like it's impossible for us to have kids.
More than 10 years passed, and we remained childless. My husband had stopped saying he wanted children. Although my relationship with my in-laws was good, my relationship with my husband had become strained. He started coming home late at night, often after drinking, and his work was fraught with failures. He was frequently scolded by his father, the president, and was always in a bad mood.
It's your fault for not supporting me as my wife.
He would lash out at me like that. Then, at the age of 43, I miraculously became pregnant. I was so happy and relieved that the difficult infertility treatment had paid off, I couldn't help but cry. I thought he would be happy, so I told my husband, but his reaction was unexpected. Good news. Happy for you. I'm pregnant.
Bringing this up now. What am I supposed to say?
What? Aren't you happy?
Do you even realize how old you are? You're a 43-year-old woman. Don't you know there are risks with late pregnancies?
What do you mean?
It means the child could have disabilities. I want you to get an abortion.
What?
I've decided to marry a younger woman who doesn't have these risks. Let's get a divorce. I'll give you alimony.
How could he say such a thing? I felt like I had been thrown from heaven to hell. Unable to bear it, I decided to pack my things and leave the house. But first, I had to say goodbye to my in-laws. They were shocked by the sudden news. They asked me to stay and have the grandchild here, but living with my husband had become unbearable. Ignoring my in-laws' pleas, I left the house. After receiving the alimony, I signed the divorce papers, changed my phone number, and cut ties with my in-laws. I heard my husband planned to remarry the new secretary his father had hired. It's a trivial matter now, but it seems my husband has a thing for secretaries. It would probably be uncomfortable for his new partner if I were around. I gave birth to my baby on my own. It was a beautiful baby boy. Raising a child alone was challenging, but my son was irreplaceably precious to me. One day, when my son was 3 years old, I unexpectedly ran into my ex-husband in front of the station.
Isn't that Natalie?
Hearing a familiar voice, I had a bad feeling. I gripped my son Max's hand tightly. Seeing Max, my ex laughed and said,
Given the IVF and your age, the kids probably got problems, huh?
My ex was walking arm in arm with a young woman. Could she be his new wife? I never wanted to see him again, but it couldn't be helped. There I was, unable to run away, holding my 3-year-old son's hand.
Is that kid mine? I told you not to have him.
It's none of your business anymore, is it?
Sure. I have no intention of acknowledging him. Just don't bother me.
He was an awful man, and deep down, I'm so glad I left him. But the woman next to my ex had been acting strange the whole time. Her face pale, her lips trembling. She's frightened. Is that your child? She muttered. She was whispering something into my ex-husband's ear. I couldn't hear well because her voice was so low, but I faintly caught the words, "Your father's estate is."
Huh?
Ethan widened his eyes like saucers and stared intently at my son. Then he glared at me and yelled,
You're a stranger to me now. Don't you dare come near my family's home, ever.
And with that, the two of them ran off as if they were fleeing from me. What in the world was it about? I couldn't make heads or tails of it. But being told to stay away made me think there must be some secret at my in-laws' place. Curious about my ex and that woman's reactions, I found myself heading to my in-laws' home for the first time in 4 years. The helper, Grace, greeted me with tears in her eyes, saying, "It's been so long, madam. I'm so glad to see you." My Mill had passed away 2 years ago, and my Phil was bedridden due to illness. Seeing me, my Phil was overjoyed despite his frail condition. But he looked haggard and pale and sick.
You've come at last, Natalie. I've been looking for you everywhere.
David, it's been a while. I'm sorry for not visiting sooner.
And who is this boy?
This is Max. He's 3 years old now.
So, you had Ethan's child.
I nodded firmly. My Phil tenderly stroked Max's head with a look of affection. He then handed me a business card, urging me to visit a lawyer. The lawyer was a close friend of my Phil. Following my father-in-law's advice, I visited the lawyer and was shocked by the startling truth he revealed. 2 months later, I received a call from Grace, the household helper, informing me of my father-in-law's passing. She also shared some intriguing news with me. 3 days later, dressed in mourning clothes, and with my son by my side, I headed to the funeral service. The ceremony had already started, with my ex-husband delivering the eulogy. The young woman I had met previously was standing close by him.
My father may have passed away, but I will be taking over the company and protecting it firmly, along with Molly, my father's secretary. We will also build our family together, so I ask for your support.
He spoke without shedding a tear, delivering his speech with gusto. During the eulogy, Ethan noticed me and my son and shouted in surprise,
Natalie, what are you doing here? Get out. This place isn't for you.
Ethan ordered his employee to drag me out of the funeral hall. I was upset at how rudely my own son was being treated, even though I had Max with me, but I couldn't resist when several men started pulling at my arms. The mourners were shocked by the commotion, looking at us with a buzz of whispers.
Please, everyone, be quiet.
The person who stopped the commotion. It was a lawyer who had been of service to my Phil for many years.
There is a will that the late president asked to be announced at his funeral.
Stop it. There's no need to say it. I, his only son, will inherit everything.
Ethan tried to stop him, but the lawyer ignored him and began reading the will. The contents were shocking. The company was to be left to the vice president, who had worked hand in hand with the president to grow the company. As for his son Ethan, lacking in managerial talent, he was advised to work under the vice president. His estate was to be left entirely to the child born to his ex-wife, me, if there was one, appointing me as the guardian. I was not surprised, as the lawyer had informed me of everything in advance, but the mourners were in an uproar. Ethan's fiancée bit her lip, her eyes darting around in confusion. She was working as a secretary to my Phil, so it seems that she knew the contents of the will by some means. So when she first saw Max, she was shocked because she thought Max would take away the inheritance.
What about my position then?
People going to jail don't have a position to worry about.
What? What are you talking about?
I know why your dad suddenly fell ill. Ethan looked at me, his face turning pale, glaring at me as if he saw a demon. In fact, I had heard from the helper, Grace. She saw Ethan and his fiancée Molly putting flowers in my father-in-law's food. Grace found it suspicious and secretly took photos with her cell phone. I got those photos from Grace, and after researching online, discovered that the flower is highly toxic. It's a common flower, but both its stem and root are poisonous, and even drinking water from a vase with this flower can be lethal.
That's a lie. You made this up.
There's photographic evidence and a witness, so there's no escaping it. Ethan, cornered, was desperately thinking of a way out. Then he began to shout.
It's not my fault. It was Molly. She instigated everything.
He tried to shift the blame onto his fiancée Molly. Molly panicked.
You were the one who said we couldn't become the president until your father was gone and asked for my cooperation.
You said you overheard Dad and the lawyer discussing leaving the estate to Natalie's son, which is why I felt I had no choice but to do what I did to Dad. It's your fault.
How dare you blame me? You were the one who brought the poisonous flowers, not me.
Both of them ended up confessing everything. They effectively admitted their guilt in front of all the mourners. Ethan, in a complete about face, began apologizing to me.
Natalie, I'm so sorry. Please, tell everyone this was all a lie. My life is over if the police get involved. I beg you.
It's too late for that. I've already submitted the evidence to the police. They should be arriving any minute now. Leaving behind a wailing Molly and a stunned ex-husband, I left the scene. I heard the sound of a police car approaching. I didn't want Max to witness any more of his father's disgrace. Subsequently, my husband and Molly were taken away by the police. The crime of taking his father's life is serious, and he has no remorse, so it will take him many years to get out of the fence. With the inheritance left by my Phil, I bought a house in the suburbs where I now live with my son. Having witnessed my ex-husband blinded by greed to the extent of harming his own father, I am committed to living a modest life to ensure we don't fall into similar pitfalls. I continue to work as before, pouring love into raising my son. Just seeing my son grow up healthy and happy fills me with contentment, a sentiment that defines my current state of happiness.
Don't you dare have a child with another man, you cheater, you no good woman.
My husband's face turned red as he spat out these insults at me.
We're getting a divorce right now. Both of you, get out of this house.
His loud and aggressive voice made me close my eyes in disgust. There had been some misunderstandings between us and his family, but I never expected him to lash out so vilely. Moreover, his accusations were unfounded. There was no way I would cheat. The reason for this situation was the result of our daughter's blood test. Both my husband and I have blood type O, so our child should also have blood type O, but surprisingly, our daughter's blood type came back as type A. As soon as he heard this, my husband's face turned pale, convinced I had cheated, and he blamed me entirely. I would never cheat, but this is puzzling, and I want to investigate. Let's do a DNA test. When I calmly suggested this, my husband looked down on me with a sneer.
Yo, go ahead. It'll just prove your infidelity anyway. Just go ahead and hang yourself.
My husband, stubborn once he's made up his mind, gleefully offered his own hair for the test. 2 weeks later, the DNA test results arrived. I showed them to my still doubtful husband. His eyes widened slowly, and his brows, previously furrowed in anger, now drooped with confusion and worry.
This can't be. What's going on?
Looking him straight in the eye, I said calmly, I don't know, but you wanted a divorce, so let's proceed with that. And we should tell your parents about this. They'll understand the truth. My name is Michelle. I'm 28 years old. I work for a company that deals in household goods in the HR department. I met my husband, Kevin, at a gathering through mutual friends. He works in a family-owned tech business with his parents. I decided to marry him because his easygoing nature was a soothing contrast to my structured corporate life. We got along well, but dealing with my in-laws was a constant source of stress. Because my in-laws think that a woman should join her husband's family after marriage, though I want to continue my job even after marrying, our views clash, leading to me receiving snide remarks every time we meet.
Are you still working? It's disgraceful for a woman to be gallivanting about. Quit your job and help out at home.
My mill often called me just to say such things. Dodging her was one thing, but it was quite stressful to spend my precious days off with her. I love my job, and recently I've been involved in hiring new talent. I look forward to building my career. Additionally, the relationships at my company are good, and although there are challenges at work, I never have unpleasant experiences. It's not just about the money. I want to continue working.
You should speak up, too.
When my mill turned her attention to my husband, he seemed evasive, but he respected my wishes.
If she wants to keep her current job, that's fine, isn't it? Dad's still healthy, and I'm not going to take over right away. Let us have our own family life the way we want it.
Hearing this, my mill narrowed her eyes in irritation and clicked her tongue.
You've become quite the backtalker, haven't you? Living together is obviously the best choice. Honestly, I wonder what your wife has been telling you.
To such a mother, my husband responded with a sigh of exasperation.
Seriously, even if she helps out, it's not like our sales are going to skyrocket overnight. Having her work would increase our income, and that would be more helpful.
While listening to this, it would be a lie to say that thoughts like, "Is it all about the money?" or "I wish for more affectionate words" didn't cross my mind. But I appreciate the fact that he was protecting the lifestyle I desire. I decided to turn a blind eye to the emotional aspect and be thankful to my husband. However, if such exchanges continue for months, half a year, and then a year, I can't stay the same. My mill, without giving up, keeps insisting on living together and retiring. It seems she really has a strong attachment to this idea and is not willing to compromise at all. Frustration must have boiled over because she exclaimed, "You're crazy for being so obsessed with going out to work. What are you after? A man? Yes, that must be it. You're neglecting your husband for a man at work, aren't you? How disgusting. That's just filthy," she ranted, letting her imagination run wild and working herself into a hysterical state. Calming her down was tough, and it took effort to placate her with tea and snacks. Of course, my husband never believed her fantasies. But he seemed to grow wary of my mill's constant nagging and tantrums, and he no longer stood up for me as he used to.
Look, if it's going to upset Mom this much, shouldn't we just give in? You must be stressed out with her raging all the time, Michelle. Eventually, I'll take over the business anyway, and it might be quicker to just quit your job and live with my parents.
Kevin murmured this while looking down at the dining table. After finishing, he held his head in his hands and sighed deeply. I can understand how he feels caught in the middle and tormented between his mother and me. However, I was shocked to lose the support of someone who used to stand by me. Why? Why would you say that too? I stopped washing dishes and appealed to him in a tearful voice.
Why, you ask? You see how my mother is. I'm tired of being constantly attacked by her just for continuing our current life. And you must be tired of it too, right? We've been dealing with the same thing for over a year now. Do you still want to keep working despite that?
Indeed, I had reached my limit with the escalating sarcasm and verbal abuse from my mill. But my job is an important part of my life. I really don't want to let it go. And considering my mill's nature, living together could just start a new phase of harassment. Yes, but you're her son, right? I want you to convince her. You said it was beneficial for us to have my income. Don't just cave into your mother. There's no guarantee that living together will solve everything. Tears were welling up in my eyes, but at the same time, I was clenching and trembling my fist. As well as feeling sad about my husband's betrayal, anger was bubbling up inside me. Then, Kevin, clearly irritated, slammed the newspaper on the table and stood up abruptly.
Enough already. That's old news. Sticking to the same opinion won't solve anything. You're stubborn and selfish.
Wait, you say what suits you and flip-flop when it doesn't. That's dishonest. I retorted strongly as he tried to leave. Our day ended with such argumentative exchanges. I was exhausted and went to bed early, leaving the chores half done. Why had things come to this? The issue with my mill was bad enough, but what was really painful was how my husband's attitude has changed. If he drifted away, I would be completely alone and unsupported. Feeling utterly alone with no one to support me, I had to stand firm in my beliefs, which was an incredibly daunting experience. Our relationship had been strained since that fight, but a few weeks later, I found out I was pregnant. After feeling unwell for days and being urged by colleagues to see a doctor, I discovered I was 2 months pregnant. Kevin was happy about the news. He then became more attentive to my health.
If it's a boy, he could be my heir. If it's a girl, I hope she's as cute as you. Michelle, you've been managing both work and household chores, but this is an important time, and you shouldn't overdo it.
Moved by his kind words, I was touched for a moment. But just when I thought everything was going well, my husband bluntly said the very thing I didn't want to hear.
Yeah, how about you resign now? Work might be too much during pregnancy, and this is a good chance. If we live with my parents, my mom will take care of everything so you can relax.
I felt my head heat up with anger at his words. Had he forgotten all our discussions and arguments? How could he say such a thing with a smile? Don't be absurd. This is not a good opportunity. It's like you're using the baby to force me into compliance. We didn't have a child for that reason, did we? I'm not quitting my job. As I ranted, Kevin looked troubled.
Calm down. Why are you so angry? It's common for women to quit after getting pregnant.
It's common, but my company has maternity and parental leave policies. I plan to take maternity leave, then return to work. If I quit now, we'll lose the income during the leave. Kevin listened to my persuasion absently at first, but he suddenly became attentive towards the end. It seemed like the financial aspect caught his interest.
Oh, so maybe quitting after the parental leave could work. Let's just take the leave for now and decide later.
He said that in a vague and non-committal tone, then he looked away from me. Looking at my husband turning on the TV with an indifferent face, I couldn't help but sigh. I hadn't realized before we married, but I never thought he could be so opportunistic and materialistic. I must be stronger going forward. A few months later, I went back to my parents' house for childbirth. I wanted to avoid any interaction with my in-laws and mill around the time of the birth. My parents were very worried when I told them about my mill and husband, and they were even angrier at my husband than I was.
You can't trust someone whose words change so frequently. You absolutely shouldn't stay with him. If this continues, it might be worth considering a divorce.
My mother must have been really upset about my husband, for she spoke in a low voice while forcefully handling the knife she was using to cook. Even I, who had actually had a big argument with him, felt overwhelmed by her intensity. Thank you, but he's not a bad person as long as his mom and family don't interfere. Life will change once the baby is born, so I want to wait and see how things go. I said this, and my mother sighed worriedly.
You're patient, which is good, but you tend to bottle things up. If it gets too much, you must tell us immediately, okay?
Yes, I understand. I felt my mother's strong love as I said this, and months later, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl. We named our daughter Miriam. I continued to live at my parents' home, preferring it instead of being near my in-laws. And after a year, when I found a daycare, I returned home and resumed working. During my stay at my parents' home, my husband visited occasionally to see our daughter, but we never discussed living together with his parents or resigning from work again. Rather, both of us avoided the topic. My mother never showed her anger in front of me but pressed him indirectly. Now that the family is growing with the birth of the child, please support Michelle and the child properly. While emphasizing please take care of them, she exerted pressure indirectly. Upon returning to the house where I lived with my husband, I found that neither he nor my Mill had changed, and Mill would barge into our home to see her grandchild and berate me, saying, "Enough is enough. How can a woman who has given birth not live with her husband's family and still keep working? There's a limit to being stubborn." As for my husband, he would just make non-committal remarks like, "Well, parenting has its ups and downs. It will all work out eventually," brushing everything off with casual comments. And just like that, 2 years flew by. My daughter's growth was remarkable. She could then walk around freely and has even started to talk a bit. I continued working part-time while sending my child to daycare, without living with my in-laws. My husband seemed too accustomed to both his mother's tirades and my arguments, merely watching TV impassively during our disputes. I no longer had any expectations of him. I hoped that someday, with my own strength, I would be able to convince them, and I was waiting for the right moment to do so. One day, my daughter Miriam fell ill. She developed red rashes all over her body and cried uncomfortably, whether in pain or itchiness. Realizing the seriousness, I took emergency leave from work and rushed her to the hospital. They suggested a blood test just to be cautious, so I requested the necessary tests. When asked about her blood type, I said we didn't know, so they included it in the tests. I thought it was unnecessary, but the doctor recommended it as a precaution, so I reluctantly agreed. The diagnosis revealed that the rash was atopic dermatitis, and specific medication was prescribed. It was good to understand the inflammation and how to treat it, but the issue was the blood type revealed by the test. My husband and I are both type O, and logically our child should also be type O. I was reluctant about the blood type test because I thought it was unnecessary, given what we already knew. Yet, what could this result mean? Feeling an indescribable chill, I returned home. I then calmly called my husband to discuss our daughter's atopic dermatitis and showed him the blood type test results. Isn't it strange that we're both type O, but Miriam is type A? I asked him while looking down. He became furious, raised his voice and said,
"This means divorce. You must have cheated at work."
Shocked by his aggressive manner, I flinched. Wait, this is just a report. There might be a mistake in the test results.
No way. Having a child with another man, how? My mother said your obsession with work was because of another man, and she was right. Pretending to be a career woman while messing around with men, what a player.
My husband, with his face turning bright red and spitting, hurled insults at me. Overwhelmed by the loudness and violence of his voice, I felt a deep revulsion and instinctively closed my eyes. The harshness of his words and his baseless accusations filled me with disgust and shock. Stop talking like that. I would never cheat. You know I've been going back and forth between work and home every day. Don't you trust your own wife?
There's no trust or crap to talk about. The test results here say it all.
Kevin yelled, aggressively slapping a paper with the test results. It seemed like we were completely failing to communicate. I had completely misjudged my partner. That was a painful realization to me.
I won't raise someone else's child. I don't even want to see the face of a child born by such a worthless woman. Get out of this house, both of you, right now. And since you cheated, expect me to sue for alimony.
His shouting filled the house, waking Miriam in the next room, who started crying. As her rash had not yet subsided, I could only imagine how uncomfortable she must be feeling at that time. While I was distressed thinking about my daughter, my husband was forcefully trying to evict us from the house, piling our belongings on us right then and there. In a panic, I grabbed my valuables and the medicine prescribed by the hospital. Then, at the doorway, I confronted my husband one last time. Please listen to me. This is too strange not to investigate. If it bothers you that much, let's do a DNA test. Hearing this, my husband looked down on me arrogantly.
Fine, do it. It'll just prove your infidelity. Go ahead and hang yourself.
He stubbornly insisted, eagerly offering his hair for the test. We were abruptly forced out of the house, after which we headed to my parents' home in a rush. It was a 2-hour journey by express train, and by the time we arrived, I was exhausted. My mother was shocked to see us and furious upon hearing the story.
This is outrageous. To unilaterally decide and kick you out. Something's wrong. The blood test is indeed strange, but as a couple, you should work together to find a cause. Send the husband back to his parents.
My mother, having said that, gently applied ointment to her daughter, who was still itching, and soothingly said, "It must have hurt, and you were scared, weren't you? Poor Miriam, you haven't done anything wrong." I apologized to my company and took leave, focusing on caring for my daughter while staying with my parents. I also sent my husband's hair for DNA testing and waited for the results. Given that I hadn't cheated, the blood type issue was genuinely puzzling. Though I hated to think of it, even if my husband had been unfaithful, any child should have been from his mistress, which should not lead to this situation. After a little over 2 weeks, the DNA test results came. Together with my mother, I slowly opened the envelope. The document contained surprising information. Of course, Miriam was undoubtedly the child of my husband and me. It also confirmed my blood type as O. However, my husband's blood type was revealed to be type A. I went back to the house I had been expelled from to share this fact. Anticipating trouble, I decided to leave my daughter with my mother.
What are you doing here, you bitch?
My husband, who was at home, greeted me coldly, but I remained calm and showed him the test results. His eyes widened slowly as he looked at the paper, his anger shifting to confusion and anxiety.
That can't be. How is this possible?
He had always believed he was type O. Of course, there was no reason to lie about such a thing, and my husband himself must have believed that he was indeed what he had always thought he was. Looking directly at my trembling husband, I spoke in an even tone. "We should discuss this with your parents. Surely the truth will come out." To my surprise, my husband nodded in agreement. He had previously mentioned both his parents were type O. There might be a lie in there. The tension and fear of uncovering a secret about his birth seemed to shrink him. He appeared entirely different from the man who had verbally abused me. Heading to his parents' house, it seemed he had already discussed our daughter's blood type and my alleged infidelity, judging by the icy stares from his mother.
Why are you with that loose woman?
She showed her disgust openly. My husband presented the DNA test results to her with trembling hands.
It's not the time for such talk. Look at this. You and Dad both said I was type O. Why does it show type A?
She slowly took the paper and stared at it intently, her face strained. Then, we were led to a back room and seated on a sofa. Facing us, she sat upright, her demeanor formal and silent. She seemed to have something to say but hesitated, biting her lip and looking down.
Why are you silent, Mom? Is there a reason? You're type O, Dad's type O, so naturally, I should be type O too, right?
My husband, trying to appear strong, was visibly shaken, his hands trembling under the table.
Well, but...
My Mill's face quickly lost its vitality, turning as white as a doll's. She frowned painfully, her lips turning purple and trembling.
Come on, why won't you say it? Tell me the truth.
Despite noticing his mother's condition, my husband persisted in his questioning. Then there were a few seconds of silence. Then my Mill let out a quiet sigh and slowly started to speak.
I've kept silent until now. The truth is, Kevin, you are not the child of your father and me.
Understandably, my husband was greatly shaken by this sudden revelation.
What? No way. What do you mean?
Naturally, Kevin was greatly flustered by sudden confession.
When I was about to marry your father, I had a careless affair with another man. You are the child from that time.
My husband was then 30. It must be a tremendous shock to see the belief in one's family crumble after all these years. He was visibly shaking from head to shoulders.
Does Dad know about this?
When my husband asked, his mother made a pained expression. And just from that look, the answer became clear.
You've hidden this from me and Dad all along.
My husband, mouth agape and on the verge of tears, continued to stare at his mother. She shed a single tear.
Kevin, it's true that we raised you dearly as our own child.
She had an affair shortly after her marriage and became pregnant with that man's child, continuing her life while deceiving her family that the child was her husband's. Yet, she maintained her love for her son throughout.
Even if you say that, I can't accept it. So, was your affair partner type A? Why hide such an important thing?
My husband, eyes red from holding back tears, stood up to confront her.
Probably.
She murmured, then fell silent, looking down. What a situation. The long-hidden secret of my Mill came to light because of my daughter's blood type. Was it fate or divine retribution? At least Miriam is undoubtedly mine and my husband's child, leaving me with no further role. I was ready to watch the unfolding scene.
Can this really happen? True, I never verified my blood type through testing. I've always been healthy since childhood, so I never needed to. I had no choice but to believe Mom when she said I was type O.
I truly am sorry.
At that moment, my Mill responded meekly. Quietly, the door to the room opened.
I've heard everything.
There stood my Phil, his expression beyond anger, chillingly impassive. He also had recommended letting me into the house and would make snide remarks whenever we met, but I didn't interact with him much because my Mill's extremism was too dominant. His face, usually concerned about his business's future, now expressed a feeling of betrayal and disappointment towards my Mill's concealed infidelity.
Hey, is it true that Kevin isn't our child?
My Phil asked in a low voice.
Were you listening?
My Mill began to panic, realizing her private conversation had been overheard. While she fumbled for excuses, my Phil found the test results and scrutinized them.
You had an affair with another manual, and you've been deceiving me all these years.
My FIL's mask of forced calmness quickly fell away. His face turned bright red as he shouted at my Mill with a demonic expression.
I didn't mean to deceive you. Kevin is our beloved son. Haven't we cherished raising him?
Yes, indeed. Deceived by you. I've been raising another man's child for 30 years.
With a loud bang, my Phil slammed the test results onto the table. At his fierce demeanor, both my husband and I involuntarily flinched. Unable to withstand his fury, my Mill stood up to retort.
What now? It's useless to get angry about it. I haven't been in contact with that man anymore, and it was 30 years ago. It should be statute barred by now, right?
No statute of limitations. I never thought you could be such an unfaithful woman. The evidence of your affair is still standing right here.
My Phil shouted this while pointing at my husband. Caught in the shocking quarrel between his parents, my husband was speechless.
Given this revelation, I will end our marriage. We're getting a divorce. And you, Kevin, if you're not my son, don't ever cross our threshold again.
Wait, this can't be real.
Amid the ongoing quarrel between my in-laws, my husband was thrown out of the house. Feeling excluded, I also left and ended up discussing divorce with my husband at a nearby diner.
I understand you didn't cheat. It was all a misunderstanding. Miriam is definitely our child, so I take back the divorce. We should just go back and live together again.
Indeed, typical of my opportunistic husband. It was surprising that he came up with such a convenient proposal at this point. With a sense of disillusionment, I responded in a measured tone. Of course not. The misunderstanding is cleared, but words once said can't be unsaid. The things you said were too harsh, not only towards me, but calling Miriam a child of a worthless woman is unforgivable. I can't stay married to someone who can say such things easily. I'll proceed with the divorce.
Wait, don't say that.
He tried to stop me, but I gave him a cold smile. Isn't it for the best? You'll be rid of a wife who won't live with your parents or quit her job and doesn't listen to your family. You used to support me, but gradually you just followed your mother's words. I refuse to stay with an unsupportive husband. Let's handle the rest through a lawyer. Goodbye. I quickly stood up, leaving my bewildered husband alone in the bustling diner filled with happy families. Then, I boarded the train to pick up my daughter waiting at my parents' home. He returned to his family home only to be denied entry, as his father had said, and was fired from the family business. Naturally, I received a message stating that the discussion about him being the heir was now void. I ignored the message and immediately started looking for a law firm to proceed with the claim for compensation. Because my husband's actions were considered emotional harassment, I was able to claim $20,000 in compensation. After receiving the certified mail, my husband complained that he had no job and couldn't pay, but I firmly refused to reduce the amount. He had been complacent about eventually taking over the family business and becoming the president without saving any money. I knew well that he had squandered all his earnings, apart from living expenses, on alcohol and gambling. Moreover, we could no longer afford the apartment we lived in. Meanwhile, my ex-Mill, caught for her affair and facing a late-life divorce, managed to contact her past lover and sought refuge with him. My ex-husband got in touch with his mother, and they met up to go together to the home of the man who was his biological father, resulting from the affair. The man, who was the affair partner 30 years ago, was shocked and greatly bewildered when the woman from back then and the unexpected son suddenly showed up at his doorstep. He claimed not to remember such things from so long ago. He denied remembering the past incident, trying to evade the situation. My ex-Mill, catching him, insisted on a DNA test, claiming she would bear the cost. This scene unfolded at his doorstep, discovered by his current wife, leading to a confrontation among the three. The affair from 30 years ago was now exposed, and the biological father's wife, upon learning of his past infidelity, initiated a divorce, causing a commotion in front of my ex-Mill and my ex-husband. Following the argument between my ex-husband and me, there was a fight between my ex-husband's parents, and finally a confrontation between the affair partner of my ex-husband's mother and his wife. One chaotic scene led to another, resulting in a tumultuous situation everywhere. While this was happening, I rented a new apartment close to my parents' home and started living there with my daughter. I never wanted to return to the room I shared with my husband, nor could I rely on my parents' house indefinitely. My mother later encouraged me, saying, "Your husband is strange, and so is his family. It's good that you divorced. From now on, let's take good care of Miriam together." I felt relieved with her occasional assistance. After apologizing and explaining the situation to my company, I requested a transfer to a branch closer to my new home, which was granted due to my good work record. My work performance had been well regarded, so although it was regrettable to leave the main office, my transfer request was accepted, and I was able to return to work successfully. Just as I was starting my new life, my mother arrived at my house with an angry expression.
Can you hear me out?
It seemed she wasn't angry with me, so I let her in to listen.
Your ex-husband showed up at our house of all places. Can you believe it?
As my mother sipped the tea I made, her brows furrowed in irritation. I felt a sense of disgust at his shamelessness and sorry for the trouble caused to my parents' home.
He said he's unemployed and can't pay child support, so he came begging to you for help. When I told him you've already started a new life, he turned pale and trembled, shamelessly asking us for money too. He was so disgraceful that I quickly threw him out.
After venting, my mother seemed relieved and drank her tea quickly. I'm sorry for causing trouble even to you, Mom. When I apologized, she gave me a generous smile.
It's okay. It's all over now. I warned him that I'd call the police if he came again, so he won't bother us anymore. You should forget about it quickly. and focus on doing your best for yourself and Miriam.
My mother said this and gently tapped my shoulder. Encouraged by her warmth, tears welled up in my eyes. By the way, my mother is genuinely typo. Afterward, I received messages and voicemails from my ex-husband almost daily. It seems that my ex-husband, his mother, and her affair partner, all ousted from their respective homes, ended up living together out of necessity. When I saw the messages, I couldn't help but laugh at the bizarre combination. However, it was clear that those who had caused such turmoil couldn't possibly live together harmoniously. Indeed, it seemed none of them were getting along. He turned to me for help, brazenly seeking assistance in his audacity. I ignored everything and blocked his accounts and phone numbers. Yet, my ex-husband's refusal to accept reality persisted. Then, he even went so far as to show up at my current workplace. Fortunately, he never got the chance to confront me. Haunted by the repeated harassment, I had discussed his behavior with my company, which had taken preemptive measures. The moment the entrance surveillance cameras captured his presence, an alarm sounded throughout the office. I watched his actions through the office monitors. He was startled by the alarm and ran away from the approaching security guards. Witnessing my ex-husband's obsession, my coworkers unanimously sympathized with me and promised to prevent him from coming near in the future. Following that incident, another person visited my company. Surprisingly, it was my ex-Mill, with whom I should have had no connection. Unfortunately, she arrived during my lunch break when I was out of the office and confronted me in the hallway.
Finally found you. You need to take responsibility for once.
Her voice echoed in the office corridor. A passerby employee looked on with concern as someone from outside the company angrily confronted me, distorting her face in rage. "What do you mean, suddenly? Why have you come to my workplace?" As I stood bewildered, she, now considerably more haggard and pale than before, began to shriek at me in a shrill voice.
Of course it's your responsibility. If only you hadn't looked into things like blood types. If you hadn't done that DNA test, none of this would have happened. Your unnecessary actions have ruined everything I've built up. Now it's all a complete mess.
Despite her own infidelity and decades of silence, she tried to shift the blame onto me. As she lunged at me, security detained her. The situation quickly escalated to the point where the police were called. Strangely, my ex-husband was also present, seemingly watching from the shadows, and it appears they were both taken in for questioning together. I desperately wanted them to stop. I had already begun a new life and was completely severed from my ex-husband through divorce. "I'm begging you, just let me live a peaceful life," I thought to myself as I headed home the next day. Just like the previous day, there was someone lurking in the hallway at the office. This time, it was my ex Phil who showed up. I never told him where I work, so I wondered where he got the information. Feeling uneasy, I met his gaze and he said, "Well, I've made some noise and caused a lot of trouble in the past. After divorcing my wife and kicking out my son, I realized we're short-staffed at the company. Just because we're divorced, you're still part of the family, right? So, how about helping out at our place as an employee?" he said with a sly grin, spouting some nonsensical theory. "Please don't be ridiculous. I am your estranged son's ex-wife. We have no connection now. If you're headhunting, please look elsewhere." When I responded with at most calm, my ex-filial's smirk quickly turned into a sharp glare, and he aggressively closed in on me.
What? You're talking back now. When you were married to my son, you refused to quit your job or live with us, always having your own way. And now, even when I'm offering to hire you from scratch, after cutting ties with my son and wife, you still refuse. Geez, modern women are also presumptuous and annoying.
His unreasonable behavior was obviously out of place, and just like when my ex-mill showed up, security and the police arrived soon after and took him away. Thus, the days of the three related individuals intruding on my workplace came to an end, and I was finally able to be free, with my colleagues expressing their concern for me. I can now focus on my work peacefully. Regarding my ex-husband's family, it seems my ex-Phil tried to use the still family even after divorce theory on my ex-husband and ex-Mill to salvage the understaffed business. Both my ex-husband and ex-Mill, struggling with housing and finances, reluctantly agreed to help if it meant having a place to live and work. But a family so riddled with lies and betrayal couldn't possibly function well together. As expected, both their family life and business did not go well, with loud arguments echoing throughout the neighborhood day and night, leading to their ostracism by the community. Despite this, I am receiving the alimony payments consistently. Because I have a lawyer involved, they send reminders whenever the payments stop. Likely, making the alimony payments is straining their finances to the point where they are living begrudgingly in debt. To repay the debt, their financial situation worsens and they are engulfed in a vicious cycle. My ex-husband seems to be exploited for cheap labor at his father's company. On the other hand, my life is looking up. With the expertise I developed at the headquarters, I am valued at my new workplace. I am praised for my fast and accurate work and have already gained the trust of my colleagues. Talks of promotions and greater responsibilities have already begun, and I am expected to excel even more than before. The environment is peaceful and cheerful, making me want to work here for a long time. My parenting is also going well. With Miriam in daycare during the day and occasional help from my mother, she is growing up fast. Regular visits to the doctor have gradually improved her eczema, providing some peace of mind. Her eager sharing of daily events at daycare is irresistibly adorable. Her third birthday is quickly approaching, and my mother and I are discussing how to celebrate it. Even though she is still young and may not remember, I want to give her a lovely and adorable celebration. Recently, my mother has been diligently knitting a handmade sweater for her.
I'll knit the cutest sweater in the world, so look forward to it.
My mother said, beaming with enthusiasm in front of me. I've started baking, making daily treats while preparing to make my daughter's birthday cake with my own hands. Strawberry cake is nice, but apple pie sounds good too. What do you think, Miriam? When I asked Miriam, she adorably responded, apple pie. Her cuteness made me smile involuntarily. There might be hardships in the long journey of life ahead, but I want to face them with a smile, trusting the people around me, carefully handling both my job and parenting. With Miriam by my side, everything feels manageable.
I'm graduating in half a year and I've got a job lined up, so we don't need her anymore, right?
We don't. But she's still of use until we inherit. So I'd like to get rid of the trash as soon as possible.
It seems John was also there. Since we had separate bedrooms, I only realized John was awake at this moment. I hadn't intended to eavesdrop on their conversation, but their unsettling talk froze me in place. They continued their heart-wrenching conversation without knowing I was listening. For the next 6 months, I pretended not to hear their talks and didn't change my demeanor. And then came Robert's college graduation day. He left early in the morning, bustling with excitement and getting ready. Of course, there was no word of thanks for raising him or an invitation to a meal directed towards me. "Just so you know, I don't need dinner today," was all he said before he left. Had I not heard the conversation, I might not have minded, but I couldn't help but think a simple word to me wouldn't have been amiss. He's probably going out to eat with his biological mom and John. John mentioned he wouldn't need dinner either. As the two of them left, I was alone in the quiet room, with just paper and pen in hand. I am Mary, currently 55 years old. I've been living with my husband John and his son, Robert, for 20 years. John and I are both remarried. I was mentally broken from not getting along with my ex-husband's family and was discarded like trash by his parents. John reached out to me during these tough times. He was an old high school classmate of mine. We weren't close in high school, but after attending a small reunion for close friends, John, learning I was divorced, reached out and we exchanged contact information. At the time, John was raising his 2-year-old son, Robert. He is a single father.
Our lives aren't over yet. Let's do our best,
he said, which greatly comforted me. It didn't take long for us to understand each other's emotional wounds, and soon we were attracted to each other. Though scared of marrying again, I was persuaded by John's approach and decided to date him. Then, at 35, I remarried. After the marriage, I quit my job to become a full-time homemaker. Despite being advised against quitting my job and remarrying, Robert was only 2 years old. I thought it was most important to spend time together and be recognized as a family. Since Robert was too young to remember anything, and I always loved children, I wanted to dedicate myself to raising him. I thought there would be no problem with remarrying someone with a child. However, I soon realized my thinking was naive. Robert wouldn't eat or sleep, and he would start crying just by seeing my face, showing extreme stranger anxiety. Hoping his stranger anxiety would subside as he got used to me, I tried hard to become Robert's mother. I endured his night crying and played with him with all my might during the day, but he wouldn't open up to me. Seeing me troubled, John said,
"Your mom was a real beauty. You know, maybe he just can't get used to Mary's face."
It was a thoughtless comment, without any ill intention. Yet, at that moment, I felt deeply hurt as a woman, a wife, and a mother. And John kept doing that, comparing me to his ex-wife at every turn.
"What brew are you using? The beef stew my ex made was tastier."
An unnecessary comment every time he had the beef stew.
"My ex was awful at parenting. You could at least try to beat her at that."
A comment that seemed to put down his ex but was actually mocking me. Before we got married, he was always encouraging, with an attitude of us tackling challenges together. After marriage, there were times I felt treated like nothing more than a servant. No matter what I did, Robert never warmed up to me, and John's words and actions were harsh. Thoughts of divorce crossed my mind more than once during our first year of marriage. But leaving would just have everyone saying I told you so. Rome wasn't built in a day, I told myself, pushing through with household chores and child-rearing. Ultimately, Robert never did warm up to me. He stopped crying at the sight of me, but he never smiled at me or called me Mom. He was friendly with John's family, and even strangers, but it seemed like he just didn't like me for some reason. Despite that, I gradually began to feel affection for Robert. I was happy to see him grow.
Mom, please don't come.
When he started preschool, he grudgingly began to call me Mom. But attending preschool events, Robert would practically chase me away with a look of sheer terror. Consulting his teachers, they said he was just being clingy, but no solutions were found. While his growth brought me joy, the rejection from Robert continued to trouble me.
It'll get better eventually.
John would say that but never really faced my concerns. One day, I asked Robert, Mommy loves you very much. What can I do to make you love me? Robert looked surprised by my question. I felt uneasy at his expression, but waited patiently for his words. Then Robert opened his mouth.
Mom, do you really love me?
Of course I do.
No, you're lying. You hate me. Dad said so.
I was shocked by his words. John had said that. What was he talking about? What do you mean? Dad said I hate you.
Yeah, I'm not fooled. You're a fake mom. It's your fault my real mom is gone.
After leaving those words behind, Robert stormed out of the living room. I was devastated. I had nothing to do with the divorce between Robert's mom and John. Yet, John blamed everything on me. Even though Robert was young, his refusal to open up to me, calling me a fake mom, was all John's doing. That night, I confronted John. Robert called me a fake mom. I can't imagine he would know to say that unless you told him, right? Who else would tell Robert such a thing? But John just brazenly denied any wrongdoing.
I did say it. But it's not wrong, is it? Don't blame me because he's not attached to you.
I was so frustrated, I couldn't say anything back. I still didn't understand why John would do something like that. In the end, my relationship with Robert didn't improve, and I felt increasingly distant from John as well. But children's growth doesn't wait for anyone. It was when we were preparing for Robert's elementary school entry.
This backpack is good, right?
John pointed to a high-end backpack. I was shocked by the price. It looks nice, but isn't it a bit too expensive?
Why don't you ask your parents to buy it as a gift?
I couldn't immediately grasp what John was saying, tilting my head in confusion.
Your family is wealthy, and they could afford a gift for their grandson's school entry, right?
John said this as if it was the most natural thing, not noticing my bewildered expression. Indeed, my family was financially comfortable. They owned real estate, and my grandfather had even been listed among the wealthiest individuals. Given that John and I went to the same high school, it wouldn't be surprising if he knew about my family's financial situation before we got married. Hearing about grandparents buying backpacks for school entry is common. However, Robert and I have no blood relation. And since he hadn't warmed up to me, I never took him to visit my family. For New Year's greetings, John would say, "You and Robert don't need to go. We're not blood related to your parents. If you want to visit them, go by yourself," using the lack of blood relation as a reason to avoid interacting with my parents. Yet, he had the audacity to suggest they buy an expensive backpack as a gift. From my parents' perspective, they have no particular attachment to Robert. It might be a bit difficult, I said with a wry smile, declining John's suggestion. However, John seemed irritated.
Why not? Just ask them. If they say no, then I'll know where we stand.
His condescending tone irritated me. What do you mean by where we stand? I wanted to retort but held back. Of course, I couldn't impose such a burden on my parents. I planned to buy the backpack with money I had saved up from before I was married, and pretend it was a gift from them. Surprisingly, my parents offered to buy the backpack.
In our hometown, it's common for the maternal grandparents to present such a gift. If Robert's birth mom's family or John's family were planning to give one, I thought it might be presumptuous of me to offer, but isn't Robert's mother Mary?
Her words warmed my heart. Someone recognized me as Robert's mother. In times when I felt like breaking, my mom was always on my side. Thank you. It doesn't have to be too expensive. Something that Robert would find easy to use would make me happy. I thanked my mom, my voice choked with emotion. Soon after, a brand new, plain black backpack arrived. Robert's eyes sparkled when he saw it, and he immediately tried it on, looking pleased. However, John frowned upon seeing Robert's reaction.
What's this? It's too ordinary.
But this was recommended by the store as being popular. It's light and durable, which is perfect since Robert is small and heavy items aren't suitable for him.
I don't care about it being light. It lacks luxury.
John continued to criticize the backpack we received as a gift. Robert, who had been happy, quietly put the backpack down after hearing John's words. He then lost all interest in it. The same thing happened when it was time for middle school entry. John insisted on high-end brand sports bags and shoes for school, expecting my parents to buy them as gifts. As Robert entered middle school, he began to mock me on his own, influenced by John's behavior.
It's good you married Dad since your family is rich.
He said that, mocking me. I'm sure John must have been saying things like that to Robert. I had been pretending not to notice, but by this time, I was acutely aware. John had married me because my family had money, and to secure someone to take care of Robert. Stop saying silly things and go study. By this time, I had given up on being liked by Robert. Even if I was called fake, I believed it was my duty to raise him as his mother. If I divorced and left, it would just be Robert and John living together. I think Robert will have a very hard time. I might not have been a mother that made him happy, but my feelings of affection for Robert were genuine. That's why I wanted to spare him any hardships. Robert then graduated from high school and went on to college. That's when John started saying we should ask my parents to help with the expensive college fees.
Let them pay for their grandson's education. The money will eventually be Mary's anyway. It's better to use it on Robert now.
But of course, I couldn't ask my parents for such a large sum. Backpacks and sports bags were one thing, but this was entirely different. However, I knew I would get snide remarks from John if my parents didn't contribute. I used the alimony I received from my previous divorce to pay for his tuition. Although I had something else I truly wanted to use it for, I pretended it was from my parents and allocated it towards his tuition. Because of this, Robert was able to attend college for 4 years. He even received a job offer and was nearing graduation. Though we couldn't build a good parent-child relationship, I felt my role was coming to an end as he had grown up without trouble. It was on one such day. I woke up in the middle of the night and got up to go to the bathroom. I noticed the light in the kitchen. Thinking Robert had come home from a night out, I went to the kitchen to find John there too.
I'm graduating in half a year and got a job offer, so we don't need her anymore, right?
Useless. But let's keep her around at least until we inherit. I want to get rid of the trash as soon as possible.
It seemed John was also awake. Since we slept in separate bedrooms, this was the first time I realized that John was awake. I hadn't intended to eavesdrop, but their unsettling conversation rooted me to this spot.
Trash, ha ha ha.
Robert echoed, laughing.
Yay, let's go out for a meal as a family after the graduation ceremony. I'll treat you with my part-time job money.
I was momentarily uplifted by his words. But then I was devastated again.
Actually, I've invited Mom to the graduation. She used to come to school events when I was in elementary school, but I haven't invited her recently. I thought it would be nice for the last time.
That's great. It's been a while since we've been able to get together with just the family. I'm looking forward to it.
It was a casual conversation about inviting his birth mother to a meal. While there's nothing wrong with that, and I didn't expect anything in return for raising him. I had been rejected from attending any school events or milestones since kindergarten. I had wanted to attend his college graduation, but was told, no parents attend college graduations. Yet, he had been inviting his birth mother since elementary school. She hadn't contributed to his upbringing or education, just having given birth to him seemed too much of a good deal. John must have facilitated the contact without any consideration for me. Even though I tried to accept it, Robert's words, implying his birth mother was more important than me, directly hurt me.
Well, I'm not saying I'm not thankful to Mary, but she's not family. When we were divorced, I wondered how I was going to raise you, but having a convenient housekeeper around was a lifesaver.
Well, the cleaning and laundry were fine, but I wish the meals were better. The lunchbox was inedible. I always had a hard time figuring out who to pawn them off on.
You got to eat whatever you liked with that money. So it worked out well for you, didn't it?
Following that conversation, John and Robert's laughter echoed. Hearing this, I stood there in shock. It was an even more shocking fact. It was terrible that despite making lunch every day since he was in middle school, he was selling it to others. It was disrespectful to the people he sold them to and essentially trampled over my feelings, thinking I was doing something nice for Robert. Struggling to move my frozen legs, I quietly moved away from there. Listening to their mocking laughter any longer felt like it would break my heart. I had been married for 20 years, raising Robert since he was 2 years old. Yet, I was never once acknowledged as family. I crawled into bed and cried. Then, I decided on something I had kept close to my heart for a long time. For the next 6 months, I acted as if I heard nothing and changed nothing about my behavior. Then came the day of the university graduation. Robert left early in the morning, bustling with excitement and getting ready. Of course, there was no word of thanks for raising him or an invitation to a meal directed towards me. Robert left with just the words, "I won't need dinner tonight." Had I not overheard that conversation, I might not have cared, but a part of me wished for at least a word directed at me. Probably he was going to dine with his biological mother and John. John also said he didn't need dinner. After seeing them off, I sat alone in the quiet room with paper and pen. It was just past 1 p.m., too early for them to return home, when my phone rang as I was having lunch outside. The call was from John. I glanced at it and sipped my coffee with a smile. I had no intention of answering the call immediately and let it ring for a while. I bet he's panicking on the other end. Feeling a bit sorry for the incessant ringing, I finally picked up. Yes.
Mary, is that you? Where are you? What's this note about?
As expected, John was in a panic. Seeing the note meant he had returned home. If I told you where I am, it wouldn't really be running away, would it? Everything is written in the note. When I said that, John stumbled over his words, but. As the conversation was going nowhere, I sighed deeply. That's how it is, so please submit the divorce papers I've filled out. At those words, John seemed to snap back to attention. I had left the divorce papers along with the note.
I won't accept a divorce. But what do you mean the tuition fee is unpaid?
At that, I smiled again. Apparently, to John, the unpaid tuition was more concerning than the divorce. Oh, aren't you supposed to be at work? How do you know about that?
Oh.
John was at a loss for words, stammering. It seemed that John had attended the university graduation ceremony with Robert's biological mother, his ex-wife. That's probably where he found out about the unpaid tuition fees.
Anyway, they told me that if the unpaid amount isn't transferred by the end of this month, he won't be able to graduate. Just tell your parents to transfer it right away?
Why should I, just a mere housekeeper, go to such lengths? My tone inadvertently grew sharper. But it was my honest feeling. I'm just a housekeeper, right? You've brainwashed Robert since he was little not to get attached to me.
That's not true. He was attached to you, and he actually called you Mom, didn't he?
Don't lie. He only called me Mom because you were concerned about appearances, right? John fell silent. I paid the tuition for 3.5 years anyway. If you want him to graduate, why don't you, as his parent, pay at least for the last semester? I left him with those words and hung up. A few days after overhearing John and Robert mocking me one night, the bill for tuition arrived. Given all the demeaning things said to me, being called just a goal for money and a housekeeper, I couldn't bring myself to pay. The university contacted me several times. According to the university's rules, if the tuition remains unpaid, even if Robert could attend the ceremony as a prospective graduate, he would be expelled if payment wasn't made by graduation day. In other words, he had to transfer about $6,000 by today. After hanging up with John, Robert also called.
Hey, you witch. What's this about unpaid tuition? Why haven't you paid?
It seemed he wasn't with John. Otherwise, he wouldn't dare speak to me like this. Ask your father for details. I have no intention of involving myself with you two anymore.
What? What does that mean?
Take care, then.
Just wait a minute.
I cut off his protests, ending the call. Since the day I overheard that conversation, I had decided to leave the two of them behind. I then disappeared from their lives completely. My phone kept ringing all day. If they had time for this, they might as well make the transfer. The next day, I changed my phone and number. 3 months later, while at the municipal office for errands, I discovered the divorce papers hadn't been submitted. Feeling frustrated that nothing had been done in 3 months, I reluctantly returned home. Since the key still worked, I entered the house to be greeted by a strange smell. What's this smell? Like rotten food. Entering the living room, the source was clear. The source was littered lunchbox trash, instant noodle cups, and washed dishes piled in the sink, socks whose removal date was unknown, and a mountain of laundry, uncertain if ever cleaned. In just 3 months, the house had deteriorated into a garbage dump. But as expected, it was indeed as expected. It was the home of 2 men who never did any housework. It couldn't possibly be clean. Yet, I had hoped for a bit more tidiness.
Mary, you came back.
Hearing my name, I shivered. Turning around, a scruffy John stood there. You didn't go to work. He hesitated before responding.
I got fired.
Fired.
I got caught taking money from the company's safe to pay for Robert's tuition.
His confession left me astounded. You embezzled for just $6,000.
It's not embezzlement. That's an exaggeration. I got fired, but the company said it's okay if I return the money. And since Robert won't need tuition anymore, just come back home instead of being stubborn.
Are you stupid? I yelled at him loudly. I knew you were foolish, but I didn't realize to what extent. I've already left a note saying I've cut ties with both of you. But now that it's come to this, I can't live without you. It's all because you or your parents didn't pay the tuition, right? Faced with John's defiance, I let out another heavy sigh.
Please, come back. I love you.
He pleaded, nearly in tears. Those words you never said during our marriage mean nothing now. You've always been dependent on others. Why don't you try to sort things out yourself for once? I replied, half laughing. A dirty room and a dirty man. I heard a rustling sound, and when I looked over, a cockroach emerged from an empty cup noodle container. This house will only have cockroaches for family if it continues like this, I said, laughing. John didn't reply, just hung his head in defeat. Afterward, the divorce papers were successfully submitted. 3 years later, in a new place where I had finally found happiness, I received news of a death. The news was that my mother had passed away. At the funeral, 2 familiar figures approached me. I slowly lifted my face.
It's been a while. You look healthier than I thought.
It was John and Robert. John and I have many mutual acquaintances. They must have heard about my mother's passing through the grapevine. And despite all that she had done for him over the years, Robert never once thanked her. Thinking they had come to pay their last respects made me slightly happy, so I asked, "You came?"
Of course, you're an only child, right? So you'll inherit everything, and eventually, as your son, I should inherit too, right? I need to thank Grandma.
What? I couldn't help but frown. I felt a surge of disgust at the outrageous things Robert was saying. What are you talking about? You have no right to inherit anything.
But he's still our son, even if we're divorced.
John added with a smirk. Angered by their motives for attending, I raised my voice. Leave, if that's your attitude. I'd rather you didn't come to pay your respects at all. My voice was louder than I intended, attracting attention from those around us. John and Robert, as usual, were unfazed by my raised voice. However, at that moment, someone arrived who could turn the tide.
What's all the commotion about?
What happened?
Approaching were a man and a woman. And, upon seeing them, John and Robert went pale. The ex-husband and his son. I introduced John and Robert to the 2 people. Then Thomas and Emily frowned. John spoke up nervously.
President, why are you here?
President, you know Thomas. I asked John, but he didn't reply. Without waiting for his response, I continued. This is my husband Thomas and our daughter Emily.
Ed?
John and Robert looked up, surprised, and looked at me.
My wife has been under your care. You're Thomas from the HR department, right?
Yes.
What do you mean? John works for Thomas's company. I asked Thomas, and he nodded. John looked away, as if realizing he had made a mistake.
I don't intend to mix personal issues with business, but I won't forgive you if you hurt Mary any further.
I didn't mean to.
John stammered. Robert, too, said nothing, shrinking down. Emily then spoke up.
I heard something about inheritance, but Robert, you have no inheritance rights.
Her tone was as if she knew Robert well.
So, you're the stepson my mom talked about.
Emily laughed. It was hard to imagine the once arrogant Robert looking so diminished. When I looked at Emily curiously, she exclaimed,
I'm her biological daughter. Why would you, a stepson, think you have any inheritance rights?
Biological daughter?
Yes. I'm not a stepchild but her true, blood-related daughter. Did you really think you were the only child and special?
Robert turned red. Robert likely never imagined that I had a biological child. In fact, Thomas was my first husband. We had Emily, but Thomas's parents didn't like me, and I was forced to give her up. You should forget you have a child, my in-laws would say. I wasn't allowed to be involved in Emily's upbringing. Thomas always defended me, but his family has been running a business for generations. He couldn't go against his family, especially his father. Eventually, I fell ill and reluctantly agreed to divorce. Later, I heard Thomas raised Emily well despite his parents bad-mouthing me. Thanks to Thomas, Emily grew into a kind-hearted girl who would send me thoughtful letters once a year. While married to John, I had no direct contact with Thomas and Emily. Yet, Thomas would sometimes bring Emily to meet my parents because she was their granddaughter. I always heard about Emily from my mother. I was curious about Emily but never dared to meet her while married. The love I tried to give to Robert was unreciprocated, and I ended up raising him out of sheer willpower rather than affection. After divorcing John, Thomas reached out. My mother had told him about my divorce. Even after our divorce, Thomas hadn't remarried and seemed to have kept me in his thoughts. Now, with his in-laws gone and his career stable, Thomas proposed we remarry. I shared this development with John and Robert. So, Emily is a child of mine and Thomas.
What?
John turned pale. He likely never imagined that the woman he had employed as a housekeeper was someone's beloved.
Did you approach me because I'm the president's daughter?
Emily sharply asked Robert.
It's not like that.
But ultimately, you married my mom for my grandmother's money, right? I can date someone like that.
Robert wiped away secret tears, devastated by Emily's words. It seems he said to Emily that he loved her without knowing where they had met. If Robert had been raised differently, not brainwashed by John, the relationship between my born and raised children could have been a source of happiness. Unfortunately, Robert had grown too similar to John. Being with someone like Robert would indeed be troublesome. I couldn't help but agree. My parenting was at fault. I'm sorry, Emily. You deserve someone better. Robert, please stay away from Emily and her money. After being rejected in front of everyone, Robert glared at me, but he couldn't say anything back. He's also a victim of John, but as an adult. He won't find happiness unless he acknowledges his and his father's faults.
That's why you should leave too. This isn't a place for those who aren't family,
Thomas said, effectively kicking them out. It was the perfect retort, echoing the "you're not family" I had once heard back at John and Robert. John reportedly continues to work at Thomas's company, feeling out of place. Given his age and the reason for his previous job termination, finding another job would be unlikely. Why did you hire him, knowing about John? When I asked, Thomas laughed.
Of course, I knew. Keeping him under me ensures he won't bother Mary.
His words warmed my heart. I hadn't realized it was all for me. Moreover, there was surprising news.
It seems like the son has cut ties with him. He's probably reflecting on his past actions and attitude towards you.
Remarkably, Robert had moved out to live on his own. Rejected by Emily, his plan for a large inheritance failed. He realized happiness requires personal effort. While I felt serves you right towards John, I didn't wish for Robert's unhappiness. I hope he grows through his struggles and finds happiness, a testament to my role as his mother. I now live with Thomas and Emily. After driving me away, my in-laws regretted their actions, seeing the depressed Thomas and Emily. But it was too late to change anything after I remarried.
Did you think you were happy?
Thomas asked. There were happy times sometimes. I smiled too. But the happiest times of my life are yet to come. Emily is soon to be married. I hope to live long enough to turn our past struggles into laughable memories, aiming to grow further.
So, I hear you're drowning in debt because of some futile fertility treatments.
My ex-husband sneered at me as he approached me with a sarcastic smile. This was in a renowned hot spring town. We reunited in the most unexpected place.
It's pathetic how hard you're trying despite it all being in vain.
My ex-husband looked down on me. After our divorce, he remarried and was blessed with children. He was living a contented family life. He considered himself the winner while belittling me. Whose story are you even talking about? I touched my slightly swollen belly. I wonder who really needs fertility treatments. He was about to learn a shocking truth. No matter how much he ranted or clung to me, it was too little, too late. This marked the beginning of my ex-husband's downfall. The false happiness he had acquired through his misunderstandings was crumbling loudly. Those who find happiness, and those who let it slip away. Our reunion clearly marked the diverging paths our lives would take from here on. My name is Mary. I work at a travel agency counter. I propose various plans to customers who visit the store, arranging trips that ensure their satisfaction. I found great fulfillment in this job. I married Mike after a workplace romance. He joined as the new manager at the branch where I worked, always approaching me with a gentle smile and a calm demeanor. During the busy seasons like summer break, we worked late together. During breaks at work, we would engage in enjoyable conversations and encourage each other through tough times, gradually spending more and more time together. Eventually, we became conscious of each other, started dating, and got married. After our marriage, I transferred to another branch.
The travel agency job involves a lot of overtime and is challenging. You've worked hard without a single complaint. Now that we're married, you can take it easy and be a housewife.
His caring words filled me with a deep sense of happiness, appreciating the kindness my husband showed me. However, I was passionate about my work and had dreams I wanted to achieve. For those dreams, I had lived a frugal life and saved money. So, I decided to continue working even after marriage. John respected my decision, and we both worked hard at different branches. We understood each other's jobs and enjoyed our small happiness by comforting each other over drinks every night. 2 years had passed since we got married. We haven't been able to have a baby yet. I started feeling anxious as we hadn't conceived after 2 years. I lost my parents when I was a student. Being an only child, I often felt lonely. That's why I longed for a large family. Therefore, after getting married, while not necessarily desiring a very large family, I did hope to have at least 2 children.
Don't worry, it'll happen eventually.
My husband was receptive to my feeling. He also agreed on having children. I wonder if I'm infertile. Maybe I should see a doctor. I looked down, feeling disheartened.
Don't be so negative. It'll be all right. But if you're worried, it won't hurt to get checked out.
Saying that, my husband gently stroked my head. He always understood me. I felt so moved that I was nearly brought to tears. After that, I went to the OB/GYN and underwent several tests. The multitude of tests revealed no particular abnormalities in my body.
It's good there's nothing wrong.
My husband said that happily upon seeing the test results.
See, I told you there's no need to rush. The baby will come to us eventually.
I wonder how many times I've been saved by my husband's gentle smile. It always made me feel so much lighter. Next up is a test for men. It's a short procedure. So could you possibly go during a break from work? It's likely that my husband also had no issues. But just to be cautious, I wanted him to get tested. Of course, I believed my husband would gladly accept. I was certain of it.
What? Why do I have to get tested? It's usually a woman's issue when it comes to infertility, and it would be a waste of time for me to do it.
His response was unexpected. It might be unnecessary, but just to be sure, if there is an issue on the man's side, there are treatments available. Could you please do it? His expression turned somewhat cloudy. I understood his reluctance to get tested. If a problem was found, it might hurt his pride as a man. It was a delicate issue. I knew it wouldn't be good to force the issue. It doesn't have to be right away, whenever you have time. However, he remained silent. The day ended without me getting an answer from him. One day, we visited my husband's family home. It was my Mill's birthday, and we brought a bouquet and a gift. I heard that my Phil had an affair when my husband was young and disappeared afterward. Afterward, my Mill, on her own, raised my husband and did a commendable job. I heard she went through a lot of struggles. She turned 65 this year and had retired from her job. She worked tirelessly all these years and never neglected her parenting duties. I had great respect for my Mill as a woman. She could now spend her time happily and at ease. That's what I thought. I was certain the bouquet and gift would bring joy. With that confidence, I opened a door to my Mill's house.
Well, welcome.
My Mill greeted us with a bright smile.
Oh, what beautiful flowers, and this, a set of bath salts. You remembered how much I love baths. I'm so happy.
As expected, my Mill was very pleased. It was supposed to be a pleasant time spent together. However, she then said, I'm happy with the gifts and flowers, but I'm starting to wish to be able to see the face of a grandchild. Her words changed the atmosphere instantly. I was at a loss for words and glanced at my husband. But he remained silent.
Mary, I understand work is busy, but there are things more important than work. You have to face your health properly and focus on child making. There's always fertility treatment available now.
I had already faced my health issues. I had also undergone the tests. There were no problems found.
I just want to hold a cute baby in these arms soon. Mary, I'm counting on you.
My Mill was also the same. Why is infertility always presumed to be a woman's issue? Why doesn't she say anything to my husband? Yes. I couldn't argue. I was afraid that arguing would create a rift between my Mill and me. I wanted my husband to explain it properly, but he remained silent the whole time. It felt as though everyone assumed the reason we couldn't have children was entirely my fault.
I'm hoping you'll have a baby in your belly by my next birthday.
Those words weighed heavily on me. Setting a deadline only made me feel more anxious. I tried to tell myself not to worry, but her words echoed in my mind. I couldn't remember anything about the conversation that followed. As the evening came, we left my Mill's home. On our way back, we walked shoulder to shoulder in silence. Our long shadows were cast by the setting sun. I kept looking at those shadows. My husband's shadow marched straight ahead. What was he thinking? How did he take his mother's words today? I wanted to ask but couldn't bring myself to do it. No, I was afraid to ask about it. I was scared of feeling despair from my husband's words again. We returned home without speaking.
I'm starving. Let's have dinner quickly.
He said that, acting as if nothing had happened. He probably planned to end the day without addressing my feelings. I decided to speak up boldly. Hey, John, about what your mom said today. He turned to me with his usual smile.
What about it?
Was that smile just for show? She said she wanted grandchildren. I looked straight at him.
Yo, but if it's not happening, we just have to wait, right?
No, that's not what I wanted to say. She told me to think about my body over work and to undergo fertility treatments. But I have faced the issue and got tested, and there were no problems found. His expression slowly changed. Why didn't you say anything at the time? It feels like it's all my fault. But it's not me who isn't facing the issue. It's you, John, isn't it? I didn't intend to say it like that. But once I started, the words just wouldn't stop. All my pent-up frustration erupted.
What the hell? Always about the tests. I've told you, infertility is a woman's issue. And what mom said wasn't wrong. It's not my fault.
He got angry, his face turning red. He wasn't the husband I knew. I know it's not your fault, John. It's wrong to blame anyone for infertility. But I just want to move forward. To do that, we need to start with the tests, whether it's for treatment or not. No matter how much we argued, we couldn't accept each other's viewpoints, and it remained a stalemate.
This is too much hassle. I'm hungry. I'm going out to eat.
With those words, my husband left the house. I was left alone in the quiet room. Suddenly, I felt all the strength drain from my body, and I slumped onto the sofa. The image of my husband yelling kept flashing back in my mind. Was it my fault? I didn't mean to upset my gentle husband. This wasn't what I intended. I just wanted him to understand. I wanted us to work together towards our future. The testing was for that purpose. I couldn't stop my tears. In the quiet room, only the sound of my sobbing echoed. The next morning, my husband returned home in silence. You said you were going out to eat. Where did you spend the night? I was worried. He didn't seem to listen to me.
It doesn't matter.
That was all he said before leaving for work. It was our first major fight. These things happen. I hoped he would be in a better mood by evening. Thinking this, I too headed to work. I kept sighing all morning. However, my husband's mood didn't improve for days. He started leaving home earlier and coming back later than before. On weekends, He would go out without a word and return when I was asleep. The time we spent together as a couple had drastically reduced. It felt like he was avoiding me. I no longer knew how to interact with him. Eventually, this silent coexistence became our new normal. I couldn't even remember the times when we cherished being together. What had driven us to this point? Was suggesting the test really so wrong? And finally, my husband stopped coming home. "You've been away a lot recently. Where do you stay?" He had started to have conversations with his back turned to me.
"I'm busy with work and always miss the last train, so I stay at a business hotel near my office."
Likewise, he kept his back to me. "I see." Then he headed to the bedroom. At some point, my bed had become the couch. It's just a ridiculous excuse to say that work ran late and you missed the last train. It wasn't our busy season. He was hiding something. My suspicion turned into reality weeks later. My husband comes home every few days, dumping a huge pile of laundry on me. Then he packs his freshly washed underwear and clothes in his bag and hurries out. "You could do your own laundry. It's not that much trouble," I muttered as I loaded his laundry into the washing machine. At that moment, something dropped with a clink. I looked at the floor but found nothing. However, I was sure I had heard something. I searched again, more carefully this time. What could have fallen? Stepping back, something sparkled at my feet. Here it is. What is this? I picked up the shining object and held it in my hand. Oh. I was at a loss for words. What sparkled in the palm of my hand was a small earring. My mind went blank for a moment, but I wasn't as shocked as I thought I would be. By the time he stopped coming home, it was clear to anyone. My husband was having an affair. Somewhere in my heart, I harbored those suspicions. But I was afraid to confront the truth and tried to dismiss it. I didn't want to hurt myself. However, I was now confronted with reality. I wouldn't run away anymore. I decided to have an honest conversation with my husband. With evidence of his infidelity in hand, it was time to end our marriage. The next day, I headed to a detective agency. A few days later, my husband's affair was confirmed. The other woman was a new employee at the branch where my husband worked. She joined the company around the time when cracks began to appear in our marriage, a young and attractive staff member. My husband, with his characteristic gentle tone and charming smile, captivated her. He got closer to her by acting as her mentor and eventually started a relationship. It was new to me, but apparently, my husband had made advances toward various female employees before. As a supervisor, he used sweet words to get close to them and deepen their relationships. It was his cunning method. I was just one of the women caught in his trap. The reason he chose me as a marriage partner must have been because I was particularly convenient for him. I felt a surge of resentment. It was time to end this life. I was determined. That night, as usual, my husband came home with a load of laundry. You don't have to come home just to do laundry. Why not have it done at her place? I spoke to his back. He stopped and turned around.
"What are you talking about? I told you, it's work."
He looked at me with a cold gaze. "Then is this part of your job too? What exactly are you teaching this female employee after work?" I presented him with several photos. They showed the two of them leaving the workplace and entering the apartment where she lived alone.
What is this?
He seemed unable to hide his shock. Don't play dumb. I've investigated everything. And this earring, wasn't she looking for it? It was caught in your shirt. He froze, looking at the earring in my hand.
I never thought you could be such a person with terrible habits towards women. Let's end this. Now you can openly date this woman.
I said this and handed him the divorce papers. A silent atmosphere filled the room. My husband stared at the divorce papers with a look of surprise on his face. Suddenly, he burst into laughter.
What's this? Sour grapes. Are you bitter just because you can't have kids? If you've got time to take pictures like this, why not diligently pursue treatment to get pregnant?
What an appalling thing to say. Who's really being bitter here? I struggled to contain my rising anger.
Divorce. I've been wanting that too. The other woman is pregnant. I've been eager to cut ties with you and move on. I only care about my new family now.
What a reckless man, to get the other woman pregnant. I was speechless. That was how our divorce was concluded. A swift and unceremonious end. John took only the bare essentials with him when he left. I decided to move out of the apartment we shared. After canceling the lease, I began packing up. Everything he left behind went straight into trash bags. I had no regrets whatsoever. Just then, the doorbell rang. Who could it be at a time like this? I slowly opened the door. Outside the door stood a man. His hair was unkempt, and he was wearing dirty clothes. He was a stranger I had never seen before. He then greeted me sincerely and began to speak. I was astounded by the man's words. Then, 3 years passed. I continued to live frugally after the divorce, and finally, my savings reached the target amount. I had made my dream come true. Then, I resigned from the travel agency. One day, I was walking through a hot spring town. This is one of the most famous hot spring towns in the USA. The outdoor bath store was popular, and people happily strolled through the town, visiting various hot spring facilities. Recently, new sweet shops and cafes have opened, becoming popular among young people. I love this vibrant hot spring town and have moved nearby. Enjoying a stroll in the pleasant weather, I suddenly heard a familiar voice call my name from behind. Who could it be? I was shocked and lost for words at the sight that met my eyes when I turned around. It was my ex-husband, whom I had parted ways with 3 years ago.
Didn't think we'd run into each other here. On a solo hot spring trip. How miserable.
My ex-husband was wearing work clothes. He was sporting a stubbly beard, and his hair was unkempt. I wondered if he had quit the travel agency. I never imagined we would meet here. My pleasant walk was completely spoiled.
So, I hear you're drowning in debt because of those futile fertility treatments.
John approached me with a sarcastic grin.
All that effort for nothing. How sad.
He scoffed, clearly looking down on me. He probably wanted to show off to me that he had children with his new wife and was living happily. He seemed to think of himself as the winner and looked down on me. Who are you talking about? I gave John a cold stare.
I heard from the landlord of our old apartment. You've gotten yourself into debt, haven't you? After I left, Some guy you borrowed money from came to collect money. You went into debt for expensive fertility treatments and ended up with nothing but a huge debt, right?
The man he referred to was the one who visited while I was cleaning the apartment after our divorce. Dad, you're mistaken. Well, sometimes it's better to live in blissful ignorance. I then shared the truth to my ex-husband, whose expression clouded over slightly. It was a shocking truth for him. 3 years ago, after my divorce from my ex-husband, a man indeed visited as I was clearing out the room for moving. The man was not there for debt collection. He was actually my ex-husband's father. It was the father whom I had been told disappeared with an affair partner. He had come looking for my ex-husband. The father seemed to have learned from someone about the apartment where my ex-husband was living his married life. However, by then we had divorced and the apartment lease had been canceled. The name tags and mailbox labels had been removed, so his father didn't know which unit was John's. He had mentioned John's last name to the landlord, saying he wanted to meet because he had lent him money. The landlord, fearing the man was a debt collector, immediately contacted me. Upon receiving the message about the visitor from the landlord, I simply said, "Let him in. I'll meet him." The landlord loved to gossip, and I was afraid of any strange rumors spreading. It turned out the landlord, believing the father to be a debt collector, likely shared this amusing tale with John upon a chance encounter. John took it seriously. The reason my ex-husband's father visited the room was to request a loan. He had been abandoned by his affair partner and was struggling financially. Thus, he managed to find out my ex-husband's whereabouts and came to borrow money. Unaware of the divorce, the father approached me with his utmost sincerity. However, to me, a divorced woman, this was entirely irrelevant. This man was no relative or concern of mine. I directed him to rely on my ex-husband instead, giving him John's contact information. With that, he left. Hearing this, my ex-husband became furious, his face turning bright red with anger.
You gave him my contact. Since then, I've been hassled with support inquiries.
In the hot spring town filled with cheerful laughter, my ex-husband's angry voice stood out.
Why should I have to support him? He left me and my mother. It's too much for him to show up now expecting help.
It's understandable that my ex-husband would be angry. It was entirely his father's selfishness. However, I had no sympathy for that situation.
Then my wife said she couldn't deal with such a troublesome Phil and talked about getting a divorce.
That sounded unfortunate.
But for the sake of our unborn child, I convinced her to give our marriage another chance, and by helping with her family's cleaning business, we managed to settle things.
I looked at the logo on my ex-husband's work clothes. It seemed that his wife's family was in the cleaning business, judging by the company name written there. John had given up his position as a travel agency branch manager to work daily at Hot Spring Inns as a cleaner. His income from the cleaning job was entirely managed by his wife, leaving him with no disposable money. His wife, aware of his wandering eye, likely wanted him under her parents' watchful eyes by making him quit the travel agency job. I was impressed by his young yet capable wife. You have a strong wife, but it's rare for a wife to restrict her husband so much. Is there another reason? John suddenly went quiet, turning pale.
What? Are you hiding something else?
I had nothing to hide. However, there was just one thing that intrigued me. I wonder if the child really is yours. I said that while gently touching my slightly swollen belly. My ex-husband froze as he looked at my belly. It was as if time had stopped just for him. In fact, I was pregnant. As the tests confirmed, there was nothing wrong with me. After the divorce, I led a life far beyond what my ex-husband could have imagined. That life was sheer happiness. As I said this, I attempted to enter the luxury inn in front of me. Then my ex-husband called out, "Wait, please listen to me." But I felt no obligation to hear him out any further. "We didn't ask for your cleaning services, so don't come inside." He looked at me, bewildered.
What do you mean we? Who are you to this inn?
I didn't need to continue the conversation, but I decided to leave him with one final remark. "I own this inn." His face turned pale once again. My parents adored this hot spring town. When I was young, our family often stayed at a small inn in this hot spring town. That inn, filled with our memories, became very old and neglected, overshadowed by the newer, larger inns surrounding it. Eventually, it faced financial difficulties and nearly closed. My dream was to purchase and revive this inn. I saved most of my earnings from the travel agency, and with frugality, I reached my savings goal. I bought the inn with my inheritance and savings, renovated it, and reopened it. Using my experience from the travel agency, I created a welcoming place for everyone, young and old, men and women alike. The reputation of the inn spread rapidly. The inn quickly gained an excellent reputation and now ranks among luxury establishments, with my net worth reaching approximately $130 million. Particularly well received at the inn was the food. Menus were carefully crafted for each guest, with meals provided accordingly. Many guests returned specifically for the dining experience. The dishes reflected the dedication of the chef, who spared no effort in catering to the guests. I empathized with the chef's caring nature, and we were drawn to each other. And so, I had a remarriage by getting married with him. Shortly after our marriage, I became pregnant. I no longer had any conversation with my ex-husband. I turned my back on him.
Please, wait.
He probably only wanted to stop me for money. To me, my ex-husband was then a stranger. I owe him nothing. I have nothing more to say to you. Never appear before me again. I said that dismissively and entered the inn. Nevertheless, he tried to follow me into the inn, but was stopped by the staff and expelled outside. His voice calling my name faded away and eventually disappeared. Our unexpected reunion marked a turning point in our respective lives. Weeks later, I received a letter at the inn addressed to me. I was surprised when I saw the sender's name. It was my ex-husband. I thought everything had ended between us. Curious and slightly anxious, I opened the envelope. The sheet of stationery was filled with dense writing, bearing distinctive quirks, and mistakably written by my ex-husband. The letter contained astonishing information. The content was as follows. During our reunion, John began to wonder if the cause of infertility lay with himself, and he asked his wife if he truly was the father of their child. Although she initially insisted it was his, he had long felt a dissonance due to the child's lack of resemblance to him. Therefore, after repeatedly questioning his wife, she finally confessed. The child he thought was his own was actually from her previous relationship with another man during her student days. After graduating from college and joining a travel agency, the wife quickly caught my ex-husband's eye, and they started having an affair. But for her, it was just a fling. Her real commitment was to a boyfriend from her student days. She got pregnant with this boyfriend's child and considered marriage, but he disappeared upon learning of her pregnancy. Being a recent graduate and unexpectedly finding out about the impending parenthood, she likely felt anxious and overwhelmed by the responsibility at such a young age. Facing the prospect of becoming an unwed mother, she lied that the child was my ex-husband's, marrying him for financial stability. However, after learning that my ex-husband's father had abandoned his family for an affair, she saw parallels with her own past of being abandoned by her own boyfriend. To rein in her promiscuous ex-husband, she resorted to threatening divorce, which succeeded in getting his attention. She forced him to work under her parents' supervision, controlling his salary, and leaving him without any spending money. Tired of this constrained life, my ex-husband spiraled into madness. Constant arguments with his wife became routine, leading him to choose divorce. However, his in-laws opposed it. Even so, my ex-husband, who chose divorce, swiftly left his wife's side as if fleeing. Consequently, he was left with very little money. Now he wanders from one budget hotel to another. Due to not owning a suit and having poor personal grooming, he struggles to find employment even though he endeavors to search for one. It seems he relies on daily temp jobs, earning just enough to cover his daily meals. He wishes he could go back to the old days again. That's what was written in the letter. I thought to myself, don't mock me by saying you want to get back together with me. While I felt pity for his plight, it was the path he chose. He was marred by infertility issues, infidelity, and disdain towards me at our reunion. He always acted selfishly, never considering my feelings. I am no longer the person I was back then. I have a bright future ahead with my new husband and our soon-to-arrive baby. I instructed my lawyer to issue a restraining order if he ever tried to contact me or appear before me again. And then, I tore up his letter. I'll give birth next month. I do feel both the joy of meeting my baby and the anxiety of my first childbirth. But with the encouragement of my kind husband, I'm getting through each day. He always cares about my health and helps with the chores on weekends, so with him by my side, I'm definitely okay. Today is my husband's day off. Walking through the spa down together, we feel the changing seasons, and afterwards, we soak our feet in a foot bath and take a deep breath. That's our favorite walking route. Oh, the baby just kicked, I exclaimed, and my husband quickly placed his hand on my belly. He then softly spoke to our unborn child. This happiness is not something to be taken for granted. That's why I think we should cherish it. And so, I took another deep breath of the air in this town, surrounded by the beautiful nature.